Everybody, welcome to this latest webinar with the Maritime Skills Commission. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Baldwin. I'm the chair of the Maritime Skills Commission, and by day I'm the Vice Chancellor of the University of Central Lancashire. And I will just offer my apologies at the outset because I will need to drop out of the webinar before its end, but I wanted to take this opportunity to provide a brief introduction, if I may. The Maritime Skills Commission was established back in 2020 by the Department for Transport and Maritime UK. And the idea behind the Skills Commission is for us to better understand the skills needs that exist right across the maritime sector. We are aiming to ensure an appropriately skilled pipeline of people, making sure that the appropriate qualifications are available across the industry. And to support us in that work, we've got off to a good start, and we will publish our second annual report very soon, later this month. So would encourage you to have a look into that. We've done some work into digital learning, obviously as a consequence of the switch in terms of the pandemic. We've undertaken a very significant officer cadet education review, and the follow-up to that is underway at the moment. We've done some work with regard to future skills for ports. We've done qualifications for working on shore, etc., etc. Lots of work going on at the moment, and indeed we're now expanding into soft skills within the sector. But one of the objectives that was laid down for us as well within the tasking note that we got from the Minister was to ensure that we increase exports of maritime education and training. Now, you'll be aware that the UK has been very successful overall in terms of exporting both education and training generally and maritime education and training specifically as a consequence really of a long history of high quality education and a history of significant strength in terms of maritime training. And this is a particularly interesting area for us. It's a recognition of that sort of the international value of the work that we do. So we are very, very keen to work with international partners, and opportunities are now developing right across the world. And that's the reason behind this particular webinar, because of the opportunities that exist with colleagues within Indonesia. So I think that our international work is one of the most exciting parts of what we do. It reflects well on the UK. We have expertise to bring to bear here, and it's a great privilege and pleasure to work with international partners. So with that, I will hand over to my colleagues who will speak to you more specifically about the opportunities that exist. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Graham. Morning, everyone. I'm Iain McKinnon. I'm one of the commissioners, and my day job is as Secretary to the Maritime Skills Alliance here in the UK. I'm lead commissioner on this export objective, and it's a strong personal interest of mine, so I'm delighted to have that opportunity. As Graham said, when the Maritime Minister wrote to him in July last year with her formal commissioning letter, she set out 7 objectives for the Commission, one of which was simply to increase exports of maritime education and training. It's very clear from the work that's been done that the UK has very substantial maritime education and training exports. We do rather well. We're good at it. This was a commitment to do more. It builds on the work in the Maritime Growth Study in 2015, which was looking across the board at the whole of the maritime sector in the UK and looking for more opportunities for us to do better, more and better across the world. Today's event is very much part of that process. With the exports objective, our first event in December was about starting to build a community. We're very much new kids on the block, and we want to work with other people, build on what's already been done, and make connections. We wanted to make sure that everybody understood the invaluable support available from Department for International Trade. So we had 2 presentations in December from colleagues in DIT Maritime and DIT Education, 2 parts working together so that people could understand their offer. And we also launched our directory. We've been advised by DIT in particular not to publish an expensive glossy now, which would try and suit all markets and all sets of situations, and to focus our efforts on particular things in particular times. But the purpose of the directory was to help everybody in the UK understand what everybody else was up to, so that we could make partnerships and build better partnerships in bidding for contracts and so on. And build everybody's knowledge and understanding of who else is there. And we know that there's a lot of activity in Indonesia from colleges, universities, private organisations, professional bodies, and so on. Since that initial meeting, Chrissy and I worked with DIT maritime colleagues in one of their DSK sessions, that developing sector knowledge, an important part of what Department for International Trade does to make sure that representatives overseas and embassies and high commissions properly understand the nature and scale and detail about the UK offer. So Chrissy and I, this is Chrissy Clark, Secretary to the Commission, who's in charge of everything. Chrissy and I spoke at an event for DIT's maritime team. And then working through Mary Kent, technical advisor to the ILO, who's part of the Skills for Prosperity team in Indonesia. And Halida Nafaisa, who's education advisor in our embassy in Jakarta. Graham got an opportunity to present the Commission to a couple of ministers and to some senior officials in the spring. And this was a chance to say to people in Indonesia who are looking to create a Sector Skills Council, we're not about suggesting you copy our model, but we've got a model here which we think is working pretty nicely. And we're offering it as an opportunity for people to understand and to listen and learn and to probe a bit to see why we do things the way we do. A very useful opportunity. And more recently, again, building on those connections, I spoke at a British Chamber event in Indonesia, meaning I was doing it remotely. I'm doing it from my desk in London. But a British Chamber, they had an event on employability. And this is particularly the Indonesia UK Skills Alliance, a specialist arm of the British Chamber. And Graham talked about the cadet review that we've done. So I was explaining that because it fitted their employability focus in that event very nicely. And you'll have seen, I hope, that at the bottom of the invitation, the web page that we have for this event, there's a membership pack and more information about the British Chamber and encouragement and opportunity to join and see the range of services that they offer. So that brings us to today's event. I've got some personal knowledge of Indonesia. 5 years ago, I visited on behalf of the Association of Colleges here in Britain, an event facilitated for us by the British Council in Jakarta. And that great highlight for me was visiting the Maritime Polytechnic in Surabaya. Great stuff, great facilities, nice warm welcome, and really good to see that one of the senior managers I spoke to was just back from Warsash and a course that he'd done there. And then a little bit later on, through Maritime UK, I was part of a small group who met Muazzam Malik, who was then our ambassador to Jakarta. And he was talking about the opportunities in Indonesia, really enthusing. I was very struck by him saying, this is 2016, with complete certainty, Indonesia will be a top 10 world economy within the next decade. And the only question is whether it will be 7th, 8th or 9th in the world. Indonesia, of course, is a vast archipelago. And if we talk about the UK as a maritime nation, Indonesia is very much a maritime nation. There's lots of opportunities for contact there. We know there's a lot going on, and we'll hear a little later from City of Glasgow College about their experience. Our purpose today is about making connections, and connections between organisations who are working in Indonesia and who want to work in Indonesia, who are thinking about working in Indonesia, to know what everybody else is up to, so you can build stronger partnerships, and we hope recommend others. If you know a particular opportunity that isn't your thing, but you know someone else who can do it, then the UK wins, and we hope Indonesia wins. We want to build connections, stronger connections between Indonesia and the UK. And we want to build stronger connections between everybody involved in the supporting agencies, particularly the Department for International Trade and also the British Council, very active. We've got, our format is nice and straightforward. We've got two sets of presentations. First from, we're delighted to have from the Ministry of Transportation in Indonesia, Captain Sahattua Simatupang, who's head of Human Resources Development and Sea Transportation at the Ministry. And then we'll hear from Roy Gardner and Carla Gethin from City of Glasgow College. Roy's Vice Principal for Corporate Development and Innovation, and Carla's Associate Director for Business and International Partnerships. City of Glasgow College is very active in Indonesia, building some strong partnerships. So there's a lot to learn from what they're busy doing. One thing I particularly want to encourage you all to do is to comment in the chat. It's sometimes irritating when you attend events like this, when people ignore the question that's being discussed and say, hello, here I am, I've got something to tell you about what we're up to. Well, here's an occasion when I very much want you to do that. We want people to say, we're busy in Indonesia doing X and Y and Z, and we're looking for a partner who could do something else, and here are my contact details. Please, please, please take that opportunity and make some new connections out of the event. So first off, may I introduce Captain Sahattua Simatupang from Ministry of Transportation in Indonesia. We're delighted, Captain Simatupang, that you're able to join us. If I've done my homework correctly, you were at some stage part of the speaking for Indonesia at your country's delegation to the IMO in London. So a virtual welcome back. We're very pleased to see you again today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKinnon and colleagues from the Maritime Skills Commissions. I am very delightful to have this opportunity to join this meeting, and listening the introduction and the expectation and recent information that has been received through my colleagues. Cooperation or collaboration proposes potential cooperation and collaboration with regard to the maritime human resources development, whereas Indonesia has the opportunity to expand the role of being the largest archipelagic states, which has just been mentioned just now, that the UK also has similar things with Indonesia as a maritime countries. In this opportunity, I, with my colleague Lily, perhaps would like to share some idea of the existing condition and the expectation of the government of Indonesia. That is under the Ministry of Transportation strategic planning, that we have three focus of development, which is the infrastructure development, the human resources development, and then the investment and the things with regard the bureaucracy and the the government. And the Ministry of Transportation also have a specific focus by the direction of the presidents, that we have the focus of connectivity, the national connectivity, as well as the connectivity towards the world, and the transportation services, and the safety and security of the transportation. These three focus of the Ministry of Transportation will also be added with the 5 roles of the Ministry of Transportation, which has become the priority of the government at the moment. That is the priority with regard to the tourism, in the island, another island, the Kalimantan Islands, is part of the Kalimantan Islands, and priority will get to the remote and small islands and borders area of Indonesia. With this, we are focusing on the role that I am now posting at the Maritime, the Human Resources Development Center, whereas we are dealing with the maritime training and education from a vocational training center towards the vocational higher education up to postgraduate study program. At the moment, of course, there are a lot of expectation from the transportation sector, as well as the sectors that we can also enlarge the link and match of the human resources from the maritime and education training institution that is basically is the education and training institute that is under the auspices of Ministry of Transportation, which is belong to us, having the graduates from 1953 until now, has been recognized as the prime supply of the STCW human resources for the ship's operation only. But ever since the country developing the demands towards the new economic developments, that we also need to expand our role, being the institution to supervise and to guide these maritime and training higher education and vocational training centers for enhancing their capacity to deliver the maritime education and trainings, especially for not only for the port and shipping operation, but also for the area, whereas we can have the traders and manufacturers needs to have human resources with a specific task and specific roles to have a link and match with the demand of the goods or the cargo that will be delivered to to their destination, whether it is the domestic destination or the destination in international ports or other countries. So this with the slides that I can show you here, that we have the demands not only in the middle, no longer in the middle, but we have a high demand to have a link and match of the maritime education and training institution, as well as the vocational training center, to have their graduates, which has already been well experienced at the port and shipping operation, to also expand their potential to be in domestic as well as in international ports. We have been observing these various cluster of the demand of the human resources and the education and training, from level of the vocational training center to the higher education to the master in science, postgraduate program. We denominate the cluster of the potential development of the people who are graduates from the port and shipping operation maritime higher education under three categories, which will be dealing with the port company, human resources, and then the second one, the maritime traffic and shipping, which will be dealing with the shipping company, human resources, and the third one is also very important, the maritime administration and authority, human resources, whereas they will also deal with the people like us, who will be also graduate from the maritime higher education and training institution, and then elevate the capacity by entering the postgraduate program in the university with a specific study program in maritime or in general knowledge, then entering into the maritime administration and authority organization. And the potential of the people being accepted by this industry and corporation, aside from the shipping and port operation area, calculated to be about we have the potential of 20,000 of the port and shipping operation under to be shifted into the area of a new working area onshore. Currently, as many as 20,000 people. And this, aside from the port personnel, this 20,000 is approximately the numbers of seafarers that will reach the years of age of 40 years old per year. That will be about 20,000, and this 20,000 people of graduate from the port and shipping operation uh, maritime higher education that are actually currently or previously working on board the ships are actually the people who are potential to be also entering another area of maritime education and training, which will deal then what's so-called the post-sea services maritime education and training, or post-sea services education and training. Then that will enable them to join services, the industries and the cooperation on shore, which are actually also have a connection or a link with the maritime industry, especially for the ships and the trading by the ships through the maritime port and also the shipping. And if we can have the example of the concept of the services that are actually having a potential cooperation and collaboration, as well as also the involvement of experts from abroad who actually have the experience in advance of such a situation. We currently have pre-sea services. The pre-sea services are actually the services of the normal and standardized education and training under the International Maritime Organization standard STCW, whereas they will be joining the shipping industry on board the vessels. And as I mentioned, where those people will then reach a certain age that will then accomplish sea experience on board the vessels, then they will have the opportunity also to enter into the working as a shore personals on the area that I explained just now on the first slide. And with that, they will have a requirements of certain knowledge, skill, understanding, and attitude, which will be also suitable with their new working environment and working competencies. So this will be a new opportunity for us to have to search for further collaboration or cooperation with colleagues or organizations abroad, which have experience or activities in the area of disposal services for those seafarers that has gained experience and intending to have their career on shore to take the opportunity of the huge demand of the new development, the economic development, the industry development that are actually in Indonesia is now moving quite expecting high expectation to give the opportunity for them. So the example of the post-sea services that can be also discussed and can be introduced as our potential collaboration are actually various. We have various potential collaboration and discussion topics on the post-sea services for those who are actually working on board the ships and gaining certain experience, and then intending to have the intention to join shore services. A joint or a double degree cooperation with the Indonesian university, and those are actually our Maritime Higher Education Institute, and we can also have many things to develop where we probably also have not identified yet. So with that, I think I am really expecting to have this meeting to give us input. Through this, then we can probably set up milestones of activities that we can then embark into real activities for the, to take this opportunity and fulfill the demand of the workforces that are now mainly are produced by Maritime Higher Education and expected to be also fulfilling the industry, which is not only for the shipboard operation area only, but to another area. I think that is all. I hope this will also give the idea of our discussion, and with a very limited time of myself to get certain specific information for our discussion, please accept my apology. But
you're breaking up.
yeah, I'm done with my presentation, and I give it to I give the floor back to.
Okay, thank you very much, and terima kasih banyak, Captain.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think for people in the UK, you probably had some bandwidth issues. Not everybody could hear everything. Will we be able to get copies of the slides and circulate them?
Yeah, I will give the copy to you after.
Thank you.
After this, I will just ask my staff to send the copy.
Good. Thank you very much. I think it's very clear from what you're saying that there are two things really. I mean, one is the scale of the opportunity, I mean, big numbers that you're talking about, and also the range and the ambition. Because you're talking about people preparing to go to sea, people being at sea, which is standard STCW in a way, but also the range up above, not just initial officer of the watch and the engineering equivalents, but higher range of skills, and then people coming ashore. Coming ashore is the shorthand that we use here in the UK. And that nice phrase about people being able to compete properly when they're on land. Well, yes, indeed, that's something we all want, and for people to be able to use their expertise. And I see a note from Manish Farmer from the Nautical Institute talking about their expertise. Good, so that's got us off to a good start. Apologies about the bandwidth difficulties, but we'll circulate the slides and people will be able to see what Captain Simatupang was saying in detail. Now let's hear from City of Glasgow College. City of Glasgow College has huge amount of experience, depth and breadth in the international field. And I'm really pleased that both Roy Gardner are you going to nod to me? But Carla, is Roy? Yes, Roy's there. Excellent, good. Nice to see you, Roy. Roy Gardner, Vice Principal, Corporate Development and Innovation, and Carla Gethin, Associate Director, Business and International Partnerships. And I can't resist Those of you who are on the mailing list for my newsletter in the Maritime Skills Alliance, there's a fine photograph this morning of Roy and Carla's boss, Principal Paul Little, who's just been made an honorary captain in the Royal Navy Reserve. You might know that James Bond was made an honorary commander last week. So the principal now outranks James Bond, which is good news.
Yeah, he's told us
Roy and
that.
Carla.
Yeah.
Roy and Carla, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Iain, and good to see you again. Yeah, the principal has reminded us repeatedly. He may not have a 00, but he's certainly ahead of James Bond when it comes to his honorary ranking. So Carla's going to share the screen with us here. I'll kick off and I'll give an introduction and broad overview for the college, and then I'll hand over to Carla. Carla has extensive experience in Indonesia, which is something quite admirable. She was on a plane pretty much every month before the pandemic hit. So City of Glasgow College, just as a slide there, can everyone see that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Okay. We're a twin site super campus. The image you see there on the left with the lovely blue sky in the park is our city centre campus. It is £168 million in completion and build, and it houses everything that we do that's non-maritime and STEM. So everything within there is largely covering a broad spectrum of curriculum from accounting to tourism, and we house a lot of creative industries, construction, built environment, all our culinary programs, etc., and obviously the length and breadth of business and computing. The picture on your right hand side is our Riverside campus where I'm currently based just now, and it is a specialist £66 million fit for purpose maritime STEM and innovation centre. And as you can see there, we've got a jetty and we're right on the River Clyde, a very famous river, but it's going to become more famous in the next few weeks when COP rocks into town, which the venue for COP is just half a mile down the water, as we would say. So we can go on to the next slide, Carla. Thank you. So this is just an overview of Scotland's largest technical and professional skills college. Over 70% of our curriculum is full-time and at higher education. It's a super college twin site built for 40,000 students. And annually, each year, we have around 16,500 who gain a nationally recognised qualification. So go on to the next one, please. And this here is a broad overview of the departmental areas that we have within the college. So we've got 4 faculties: nautical and STEM, hospitality and leisure, education and humanities, and creative industries. And one of the things that's probably unique about our twin site is each area has the most modern, up-to-date facilities. So if you take bakery and culinary arts, we have 16 state-of-the-art sizable kitchens where students can learn from entry-level right through to professional cookery. Nautical and STEM are particularly interested in this call. Obviously, we cover everything from mechanical engineering to nautical science to marine engineering, cyber security and network and software. The other areas that, education and humanities, they cover, as you would expect, everything from business to financial services, etc. And I suppose, the main point here is that all of these areas we work very closely with industry, and a lot of them actually we showcase and franchise. So we do a lot of in-country delivery, which Carla can touch on in a wee bit more detail when it comes to giving a case study. So go on to the next slide, Carla, please. This one's broad overview. So you can see they're working with over 100 international partners across 28 countries, over 4,000 students internationally. Even during the pandemic, when they physically couldn't get here, we enrolled and taught them online live. A lot of our delivery staff were getting up very, very early in the morning to teach live out to the Far East and China. And we work, pretty much across every continent. We've got partnerships across a range of countries where we either franchise, deliver in country, or we host students and employees from those partner institutions where they come to Glasgow to train. Okay, go on to the next slide. And I'll hand over here to Carla, who's the Indonesian specialist. Thanks, Carla.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you for allowing us to come along this morning to talk about our experience in Indonesia. I hope I can live up to the expectation as the Indonesian specialist. Now, over the last 3 years, we've expanded throughout Southeast Asia and in particular in Indonesia, and we have currently established 14 partnerships across Indonesia, and the first of those was established in Batam in 2018. We now have 4 partnerships in Batam, and Batam is the largest city within the province of the Rau Islands in Indonesia. It is the closest part of Indonesia to Singapore, and part of the reasons why it was our first sort of foray into Indonesian partnerships. Now, we've got a number of partners in Batam, a number of areas. We cover curriculum development. We have designed and delivered tailored short courses, teacher training, capacity building, provision of learning and teaching materials and guest lectures. Now, this is across key areas of our specialism in hospitality, professional cookery, tourism, digital technologies, for example, 3D animation, supply chain and port management. Now, we also have a partnership in Central Kalimantan, Jombang in East Java, 4 in Bali and 2 in Yogyakarta. And similarly, we have provided guest lectures here and staff training. And this is particularly in the areas of medical communication and palliative care, dementia care, and also entrepreneurship for students. And again, curriculum development and capacity building. I'd like to just give a wee bit more information around 2 of our partnerships, one in West Java and one that we're working with Jakarta and with the International Labour Organisation. So if I could start with, just fast forward here, with West Java. Now, we do have a partnership with the West Java government to revitalise SMK vocational schools by developing a curriculum embedding industry skills in maritime. Now, in July 2019, we hosted the Governor of West Java, Ridwan Kamil, and he came to City of Glasgow College, and I think he was quite impressed with what he saw in terms of our vocational curriculum on the banks of the River Clyde. He did make a request that we worked with him to help develop West Java's maritime capacity. Now, we've now signed a letter of intent with the Governor, and you can see the picture there. We have Ridwan Kamil, but also Ainsley Mann, who is the Scottish Trade Envoy to Indonesia and the Chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia. We'll be signing a Memorandum of Understanding this month. Now, Ridwan Kamil is keen to replicate what he's seen in Glasgow for a maritime provision. And as a pilot, he's looking to create a maritime vocational school in Patimban. Now, Patimban is one of 13 new cities, and it will be a maritime city. There's also a port in the area. Now, it's in the planning process, and it will become home for 1 million people. And as I mentioned, it will be including a maritime college. So our collaboration with the West Java government is looking at improving West Java's HR capabilities with the right maritime curriculum to support Patimban's HR needs. So we aim to improve competence of students in the maritime field in accordance with the standards of the STCW and the International Maritime Organisation. Now, the outputs from this 4-year collaboration will shape Indonesia's maritime offering across West Java and further provinces throughout Indonesia. Now, I mentioned Jakarta, and I know Mary Ken is on the call today. So hello, Mary, the Chief Technical Advisor for the International Labour Organisation. Now, we were delighted to successfully bid for the UK Government Skills for Prosperity Project programme through the International Labour Organisation, which aims to strengthen Indonesia's maritime sector. Now, City of Glasgow College will deliver global supply chain and logistics to the National Polytechnic in Batam, Polybatam. That's strategically located close to Singapore, which is one of the world's largest trade hubs. Now, the Skills for Prosperity programme aims to improve the curriculum of logistics and international trade by incorporating international standards and global industry trends. We will be building the capacity of teachers through knowledge sharing, training and professional certification. and provide an opportunity for students to develop and have interactive skills, to develop a work-based learning approach. And this will be carried out through consultation with industry experts in Indonesia and also throughout the UK. Now, we're one of 4 UK institutions selected to help support and build the maritime skills in Indonesia through this project. And we're delighted that we are the only college, with the other 3 institutions being universities. Now that provides a bit of an overview of what we're doing at the moment across Indonesia. One of the asks today for the presentation was to provide some hints and tips in terms of the college's experience in working in Indonesia. So the following slides provide some of our experience, and I hope provide a bit of guidance and a bit of help. And equally, we'd be delighted to engage with any one of you to have a chat about our experiences offline as well. So how did City of Glasgow College decide to approach our projects and our developments within Indonesia? Now, one of the first things we did was to engage with an agent, and an agent that we have known particularly well over the years because we did work with them in educational projects. We felt this was important to enter into the overseas market, and particularly Indonesia, because it helped us avoid recruitment, training and payroll costs for using our own employees. Now, our first venture, as I mentioned, was into Batam, which is very near to Singapore. So our agents were able to travel to Batam regularly. Now, they were well placed to identify and exploit opportunities for us. They carried out speculative work on our behalf, so they started the building of those relationships with our potential partners. Now, that would have taken us far too much time, and we certainly didn't have the budget to be travelling regularly. So this was very important for us. Our agent also had significant knowledge and understanding of education. They were educationalists themselves and had moved into business development. They understood the Indonesian educational market, but equally they understood City of Glasgow College's educational offering. Our partnership was built on trust, mutual understanding and respect. We knew each other, so we were happy to get into a partnership arrangement with them. And of course, the agent agreement was critical in terms of outlining the responsibilities of both parties, the financial model, for example, in terms of commission, our retainer fees. Now, one of the other things that we did learn quite early on were that partnerships did really need to be demand-led. It's important to identify the needs of the institution or the partner that you're going to be working with, and what's motivating them to form a partnership with you. What support can you put in place to start, build and sustain that partnership? Now, it can be, for example, partnership opportunities can come through individuals within your organisation, and that enthusiasm of staff is critical. However, an educational partnership certainly is an institutional collaboration that does need to be embedded in the structure and function of the institution if it's to be sustained and achieve outcomes. So identifying the needs of the institution and the objectives of the partnership needs to be a consultative process. Now, that's something our agent would do for us on the ground before we even visited. They'd hold the initial consultation meetings, they'd explore the objectives to make sure that City of Glasgow College was the right fit for the partner, and equally the partner was the right fit for City of Glasgow College. Now, once that fit has been identified, then we need a clear rationale about the partnership. So in terms of its long-term vision, its objectives and its activities. Now, one of the things that was really critical and certainly helped with the success of the partnerships that I was establishing overseas was that staff and management in our own institution had to understand the implications of the commitment to engaging in the partnerships overseas, because it takes time, it takes effort and it takes motivation. So you need that buy-in from management. Now, at this stage, an agreement process is really important. And this was something that I established early on when we were moving in or enhanced our existing processes. So I developed a partnership approval process, and this includes due diligence, full institutional background check, for example, through Scottish Enterprise, including a financial check. Equally, if you've got any awarding body requirements, and that's really important in maritime because you have your STCW requirements, your IMO requirements. These need to be explored, built in, and you need to be engaging with your awarding body when you're delivering overseas. A risk matrix and mitigation is also important. Now, this allowed me, this process, to engage in a number of partnerships because it gave the management at City of Glasgow College comfort. It gave them reasons to realise, well, there isn't a risk to reputational damage, for example, or a financial risk of carrying out that full due diligence process. Now, it's at this point we were ready to move to an MOU signing, and you can see that in the picture, and that's one of our partners, Batam Tourism Polytechnic in Batam, a memorandum of signing. Now, when we're signing a memorandum of understanding, one of the things that was really useful was to promote that partnership. It stimulates interest and involvement in the new project, and it ensures that information about the opportunities reach all intended audiences. And indeed, a number of our further partnerships came through that publicising our partnership with our institutions in Batam. The first few months of the partnership are critical. They set the tone of the future working relationship, and it does help determine the success of the project. So close attention to details at the early stages can minimise problems that can arise in the early stages of the partnership. Now, it's at this point that we then move to a more formal agreement in terms of a memorandum of agreement, which is a more form of contract. Now, this gives you examples of the types of things that we would include within the partnership. It's important to think about your goals, the terms of your agreement, the project period, your IPR, your brand and reputation, but also use of any facilities. Do you require admin and physical space arrangements for the project? Budgetary, that's about being open and transparent and being aware about budgetary issues and transparency in those. The services need to be clear. The divisions of roles and responsibilities of each partner and the individuals involved do need to be clearly identified. A named contact is also important for communication. Now, that leads me on to communication. Again, we found that our partnerships could go through periods of real intense activity and productivity before and during the phases of the project, but then sometimes they could lay dormant just due to time pressures of our curriculum teams or other individuals involved in the project in terms of other commitments. Now, that was with City of Glasgow College and also our partners. Communication could be really, really strong, but then seem to slow down in the middle. So effective and regular communication needs to be maintained between partners as much as possible so you don't lose momentum. It's particularly important for monitoring and strengthening the partnership. And this is where our agents helped. So our agents were able to keep that partnership going, and the ability to be able to travel and meet face-to-face was important. And I appreciate in the current circumstances that travel, that's not something we're able to do, but we've continued regular communication over Zoom. But equally, we're very much looking forward to getting to Indonesia to again meet our partners face to face. Now, one of those important channels of communication was the exchange visits. It's critical for your institution and your organisation to recognise that the strongest drivers of partnerships are the individual relationships between members of staff at all of the partner institutions in keeping the enthusiasm and the momentum going. The brand is important, absolutely, but individual partnerships equally so. So investing in these relationships through exchange visits we found was an excellent way of building up trust and nurturing personal friendships. And indeed, I created a number of personal relationships throughout my partnerships in Indonesia. And here's a picture of Dr. Uf, who's the president at Poly Batam and a close friend. Now, although these visits are important, what happens between them is equally important in determining the outcome of the partnership. So ongoing communication and monitoring of activities, completing agreed actions and following up after visits was extremely important in key components. Now, I'm sure you'll recognise that the cultural and the working environment is also important. And it's important for partners to understand the context in which each other operates and what can be realistically expected of both partners. Language and cultural differences can hinder the planning and the negotiation process, as well as the implementation of the agreement. Now, English language is often spoken quite widely, but it's recognising that much less so outside major cities and tourist spots. Religion plays a significant part in the daily lives of our Indonesian partners, so planning meetings and timings is very important, avoiding key religious festivals and fair time, for example, on a Friday. It's also important to understand the baseline of capacity for both institutions in order to plan and manage expectations on both sides about the timescales, but as well as the ability to work together. The overestimation of capacity and the underestimation of time because of insufficient knowledge of the partner's working context has sometimes slowed down and limited the scope of some of our partnerships in the past. So about being aware that some of the working processes and structures that we're working with may not be familiar in Indonesia. Now, just as a basic example, access to technology, connectivity is taken for granted here in the UK. However, there may be a stumbling block and a severe constraint for many institutions. Equally, there may be poor infrastructural support in terms of IT, and from an educational point of view in terms of library services, for example, laboratories. Laws and bureaucracies can be complex too. This is where an agent can help out. But equally, you have the Department of International Trade, you have your Maritime Skills Alliance, the Sector Skills Council. There's a number of areas, the British Chamber of Commerce, that can support you with these processes and procedures. One thing that we always find important is by putting in training for our staff who are involved with our overseas partners. So those involved will be provided with training and information about a partner country that helps them identify the different cultural differences that may encounter, and also that allows them to interpret them and work well with their partner. Now, these are just some of the things that we had to consider that were really important to the success of the partnership. Why are you establishing it? Why is there an interest in partnering with an institution in Indonesia? And what value will this bring to your organisation and to theirs? What's your partnership selection criteria? A process, for example, a partnership approval process is helpful there and in providing some comfort to your own management. Is there a real demand from the Indonesian partner for the expertise that you possess? Is that partnership demand driven? And that ensures momentum and success in the partnership to ascertain that. It will take time from your institution. Will your staff be supported, and will they be given time to engage in partnership activities? Is there a genuine drive within your institution to work with and support your partner? What is the ability of the proposed partner to deliver? Do they have the expertise and skills necessary? Do they have the infrastructure to support the project? It's vital that your senior leaders and those that would be interested are kept aware of everything that's taking place, whether that's curriculum teams, whether it's your fans, your finance or your project planning. You need to make them aware of the proposed partnership and ensuring that they're able to follow progress. This is critical to ensure the commitment of everyone in the partnership. Now, that's all about resource capacity as well. Do you have the capacity? So my concluding slide then is just to say that partnerships do take time to develop. They're not going to happen immediately within months. You're not going to sign an agreement and be delivering within months. It takes time, and it is about patience. It is a consultative process, trust and transparency, making sure you have that regular communication and a partnership plan, strong commitment from both partners, and a supportive and enabling institutional infrastructure. And of course, continual monitoring and evaluation of partnership activity and project outputs is important for your partner, but also for your management within your own institution. So I hope you did find that helpful. Roy and I are happy to take any questions that you may have, or indeed happy to engage with you after the event today. So thank you very much for your time.
That's terrific, Carla. Thank you very much to you and to Roy for that presentation. Really helpful. And Robin Pine, Liverpool, John Moores has said in the chat, very helpful presentation, and so indeed it was. Particularly helpful, I think, that you were going into detail about the, how you'd manage things within the college and the issues and things to be working on. And I suppose the deep commitment to doing things for the long term. It's not just a case of popping over, making some money and coming back. I mean, it doesn't work like that. Making that long-term commitment. And it was interesting that that's one of the points that Wazir Malik made when we saw him. The opportunities in Indonesia are terrific, but you've got to put the spade work in. You've got to do your homework, and but the results will be worthwhile. And I think too, in terms of what do you want out of it, I chaired the board of my local college, Ealing, Hammersmith and West London for a while. We were very strong in international business, and the international team was really clear that part of their ambition was that we would enrich the opportunities for everybody in the college, because we would have foreign students coming into London, interacting. Everybody would gain from that, and it wasn't very, very much more than simply making a bob or two out of it. So lots and lots of good points there from both presentations. Thank you very much. We've now got best part of nearly half an hour anyway. We will finish on time at 11 as promised, but we've got nearly half an hour for questions and comments from everybody else. Please use the Q&A or use the chat. Chrissy and I will field comments as best we can. And worth also saying that in addition to the three speakers, we also have available and on the call two colleagues from Department of International Trade in Indonesia. Audrey Adriana, who's Head of Education and Healthcare, and her colleague Willie Putra, who's Trade and Investment Officer. So there's some DIT expertise, people on our side, if you like, embedded in Indonesia in a position to help. So a good range of people able to comment. Over to you. I wonder, sorry, and incidentally, one or two people have asked in the chat, will the presentations be circulated? And yes, they will. We have Captain Simatupang's presentation. Roy's confirms that their presentation will be available too, and Chrissy's recording this session, so she will circulate all of that when we're done. Captain Simatupang, may I ask you, and anything to say in response to what Roy and Carla have said from a City of Glasgow College perspective?
Yeah, I think that was the experience that I think can be also a lesson learned for our future activities. And with that thing, we have also the opportunity to bring our transportation attaché in London embark into a close discussion and close contact of such approach to our to facilitate our further collaboration. For those presentation that I have presented, I actually not quite in 100% of the potential that Indonesia is expecting to have or to bring into the program of that probably Maritime Skills Commission is intended to. So I would suggest that we can probably have a more detailed or more specific was this communications, so that we can be in more specific, so we can have more time to maybe continue our discussion. And I believe that the UK Embassy in Jakarta also can be very helpful working units. We have also several contacts with the officials in the UK Embassy in Jakarta, and I think they are also here with us, joining this meeting. Yeah?
Yes, that's right.
Audrey now, yeah. Hi, Audrey. Yeah, I think she's here, yeah? So that the things can be more clear. But as Indonesia is growing, and we are now is supposed to be the front line working unit who shall have a program to develop the human resources, especially in the maritime services, as the main priority of the government at the moment. So I can tell you that we have a very high expectation of quite a lot of things to be developed from the level of vocational training, non-diploma to the vocational higher education, formal academic education, innovative science, or the applied science. Both are really in a very high expectation to the program that can be developed by our, especially the Human Resources Training Center, where we are now working at. So again, thank you very much for the share that has already been given by Carla. Thank you. And I've been also to Southampton Solent University. I've seen one of excellent ships handling simulation training center. It's something that can be also. I've mentioned about this, I think, a couple of years ago when we have the UK event, UK Embassy event in Jakarta. And then, at the time, I was not at the position of at the current position for that human resources development. But now I do really hope that we can continue with that that discussion that we have already opened a couple of years ago. The reason is because we have 4 streets. The streets that become the sea lanes for international shipping. This sea lane for international shipping are actually, in the future, we also need to be taken care in the area of safety and security, but with the approach of prosperity, not the approach of security like in the past. The the situation has changed, that we are not in the situation of security interest at the moment, but we are now in the interest of the prosperity, the development of the prosperity, so we can have a lot of things to discuss aside from the regulatory framework such as the UNCLOS, whereas we have the innocent passages, then we are not allowed to have such creativity along the sea lane. But now, ever since the development of the technology are I think quite sophisticated to have surveillance of the ships passing through the sea lanes, and perhaps the paradigm of people will also be changed. So those areas along the passages of the 4 Indonesian excellent sea lanes, I think something that can be also discussed to have an open-minded new economic development. So that's
okay.
So I will share the presentation. So things such like that, I think in the archipelagic country like Indonesia is sometimes does not exist in continental countries.
Yes.
And I believe that Indonesia is the only country with the largest archipelagic islands. So it is difficult then to compare the expertise and experience of countries which are not similar with us. So talks, discussion, and close contact approach, like maybe if we can have a more close discussion or close contact discussion in detail, then it would be very much helpful.
Okay, good. That's very helpful. I mean, you mentioned Warsash and their ship handling centre. Also on the call is Lars Luna, who's head of the Warsash Centre. I'm sure he'd be delighted to talk to you more about ship handling in the different straits in Indonesia. There's a question in Q&A, and I wonder, Audrey, whether I can ask you to respond to that. It's from Manish Farmer from the Nautical Institute. He's saying, the Nautical Institute is an educational charity for maritime professional development. How can we know about like-minded organisations in Indonesia who work for professional development of maritime professionals?
I can't hear you clearly. Would you please say again the question?
Yes, this is from the Nautical Institute, a professional body based in London, but very much working internationally. Manish Farmer for the Nautical Institute asking, saying we're a professional body working for professional development, keen to make connections with equivalent organisations in Indonesia. And I was actually asking Audrey to draw her into the conversation. Audrey, can you respond to that?
Okay. Yeah. I think the Nautical Institute in Indonesia, we have several organizations and association which also can be interest with the Nautical Institutes. And most of our not most, all of our maritime education and training institutes should also be the organization that are also, I think, very high interest to have a connection with the Nautical Institutes. For instance, now we have one of the Maritime Education and Training Institute belongs to us in Semarang. For instance, they have a simulator like a dynamic positioning simulator training. I think the nautical institutes also have the capability, have the capacity also to have such assessment and also advising or also giving them some idea of sharing their experience of the similar training, dynamic positioning training. If I'm not wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong. That is part of the Nautical Institute's expertise, I believe. Then I really willing to connect with the real activities straight away. And another organization also, we have the, I think it is more to IFSMA, yeah? International Federation of Shipmaster. We have a Shipmaster Association in Indonesia. And I think it is very important now for them to transform into a new idea of how do the Shipmaster Association in Indonesia deal with the new development. So by having, maybe we can try to have a Zoom meeting with the,
I think you've frozen again. Adriana, do you want to?
Having an excellent seafarers also at their organization. But it seems like I think we need to give a new fresh air for this association to deal with the excellent organization like Nautical Institute. So that is one of the examples. And then there are quite several also association and organization which are also dealing with the professionalism. And also for us, we also have an assessment center for professionals. And this assessment center for professionals might also be very interested to collaborate or cooperate with the nautical institutes in regards with the development of the details of or the element of the competencies, which are, I believe that nautical institutes also in the position of very expert on that. I think if that can answer your question, then yeah, I can connect with those associations, and I think the most interested association that are actually willing to connect with the Nautical Institute. I think recently the demand came from the Shipmasters Association. I think that can be also introduced to our future activities. Thank you.
Okay, that's really helpful. Anything to add, Audrey?
Thanks. Well, I think Captain Sahat already mentioned most of it because from the IT ourselves, most of the stakeholder that we have been engaged is mainly education institutions, not non-profit. But as Pa Sahat mentioned, that there is several associations that's under the ministry. So I'm happy to follow up on this conversation offline because I know that there's a Wi-Fi disturbance just now, so happy to follow up that after this with more details. Thank
you very much. And helpful for everybody to see your face and get a contribution from you, DIT in Indonesia. Thank you. There's a question from Jonathan Ward. As a very small business with pretty limited experience yet in terms of export, busy establishing his customer base. He's manufacturing and supplying maritime teaching resources, and he's looking for advice as to how best to promote them in Indonesia. Who wants to pick up that? Carla, where should he start?
Well, thank you. Certainly, we found the partnership approach was important, as well as having, as I think I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, in terms of an agent. And that agent did establish quite important partnerships for us at ministry level and at director level. And that certainly then allowed us to have those discussions. And I think once you have buy-in from ministries, I mean, we also met the Ministry of Transport in Jakarta while we were in Indonesia too. And certainly that helped in terms of our partnerships and relationships in Indonesia, and as I say, having that opportunity to discuss at a senior level within the ministries certainly helped us expand and get our product into the Indonesian market.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to move to, there's a point from Aaron Grant from TK talking about the gap between training academies and sea-based training. Very much something, Aaron, that we've looked at as a commission in the, I don't know whether you've seen, there's links to it on our website. We've looked at training for seafarers, for cadets, and what needs to be done differently to meet the needs in the next 10, 20 years. And looking at the how to improve what happens on board is a really important part of that. But your particular question is there any advice for ensuring that Indonesian cadets and officers are not disadvantaged when placed with a multinational crew in terms of competence? I think that applies across the world, actually, doesn't it? Everybody has a bit more difficulty when they're placed with a multinational crew. Who wants to pick that up? One of the points that was made to me when I visited the Maritime Polytechnic in Surabaya was that this was a few years ago and things may have moved on, but they were very confident that they did a good job for the people of Indonesia sailing within Indonesian waters, but felt there was some work to be done in terms of English language competence, particularly for people working in the international market. So training in maritime English. And I think that's something that Glasgow, Fleetwood, Warsash, John Moore's all in a position to contribute to. Anyone want to comment on Aaron Grant's question? Okay.
What was the question? Is that Mr. Aaron Grant from TK?
Yes.
Okay. As a Spanish sponsoring ship owner, it is exciting to play a part, no matter how small. It is exciting to do. I look forward to seeing how this continues to improve the maritime industry within Indonesian Partners, similar to the UK. We need to ensure the gap between training and the sea-based training is somewhat close. Okay, something which is compounded by distinct training is okay. Any advice for ensuring that Indonesian partners are not set others when placed between national pool? Oh, yeah. So the question is there any advice for ensuring that Indonesian cadets and officers are not disadvantaged when placed within a multinational crew in terms of competence? I'm not quite sure of what disadvantage that was placed.
I think we're losing you again.
The priority of our Maritime and Training Institute at the moment is still to deliver the training for the cadets and the officers cadet, who are the numbers, as I mentioned, is now about 300,000 abroad. And I think we have a very, I think the TK is one of important partners of Indonesian Partners. So, if I can be more have a more detail in what actually the term of the disadvantage mean. I think I can give the answer, and if it is not, then I can also be engaged in
Okay.
not only on this meeting, but we can have also a
I think perhaps sorry to interrupt, but I'm conscious of time. But I think perhaps that's a question, a discussion to follow up outside the meeting. We've got a minute or two left, that's all. There's a question, a point from KK Lee asking how he can, I presume, can contribute as a chartered shipbroker. I don't think there's anybody from the Institute on the call, but the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers has very much an international organisation with members across the world. And I would have thought there's an opportunity there, but that's something I'll pass on to Matt Gilbert, Head of Education at the Institute. He may be able to contribute. I promised that we would finish at 11 and we'll do that. I think as Captain Simatupang said, you can only do so much in an event of this length. We hope we're starting some conversations. We want to be building relationships. We're trying to make connections of different sorts. I hope we've made a number in the last hour and a half. But we see it very much as starting a conversation, trying to do things for the long term, as Carla and Roy and colleagues at City of Glasgow College are very much doing things for the long term. Commission's here to be helpful. Thank you to everybody who's joined us. Thank you in particular to Captain Sahattua, Simatupang, Terima kasih banyak. Captain, really helpful of you and good of you to give your thank you to Roy and Carla from City of Glasgow College. Thank you to Mary Kay from the ILO, who's been mentioned a couple of times, and Halida Nufaisa from our embassy in Jakarta, who helped make things happen behind the scenes. Thanks to Audrey, Adriana from ILO, sorry, not ILO, from the DIT, Department for International Trade in Jakarta, for your contribution. And thanks very much, particularly to Chrissy Clark, Secretary to the Commission, who's made it all happen behind the scenes. We couldn't do these things without Chrissy. We're indebted. Our website for the Commission is maritimeskillscommission.uk. You'll see on that our directory. Particularly keen to use that as an opportunity to continue making contact between different organisations, and hope to continue the discussion in different ways. Thank you very much. Thank you all.